The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal floors. Thousands of different alien species sat in floating chairs that adjusted to each being's unique body shape. The air shimmered with translation fields that turned every word into sounds each species could understand. Ambassador Zethkri stood at the center podium. His crystalline body caught the light from 7 different suns that shone through the massive dome above. The Vorthan Empire had ruled this sector for over 10,000 years. When Zethkri spoke, others listened. Fellow council members, his voice rang clear across the hall. Our scouts have found something interesting in the Outer Rim territories. A small system with a dying star. The star grows larger each day. Soon it will swallow all the planets. Murmurs filled the hall. Many species remembered when their own suns had died. It was always sad to watch worlds end. But this system has valuable resources. Zethkri continued. Rare metals, water, energy sources we can use. There is just one small problem. He waved his hand. A hologram appeared above the podium. It showed a blue and green planet covered in white clouds. The world looked beautiful but fragile. This planet has life, a species called humans. They are primitive creatures who have not learned to travel between stars. They fight wars with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. They poison their own air and water. They cannot even agree on how to govern themselves. Laughter echoed through the hall. Many council members had seen primitive species before. They were usually easy to relocate or convince to leave valuable worlds. How many of these humans exist? Asked Counselor Thresh of the Mantid Collective. Her insect-like head tilted with curiosity. Approximately 8 billion individuals, Zethkri replied. They live in large groups across most of the planet's land masses. Their technology is roughly equivalent to what most of our species had 5,000 years ago. 8 billion? Thresh clicked her mandibles in surprise. That is quite large for a primitive species. Most worlds can only support a few million beings at that technology level. Yes, it is unusual. Zethkri agreed. These humans seem to multiply very quickly. They adapt to many different environments, but they are still just primitives with simple weapons and basic machines. Grand Admiral Corvin of the Hegemony Fleet leaned forward in his chair. The reptilian warrior's scales flashed red with interest. What do you propose we do with them? The usual relocation to a suitable world? That would be the standard protocol. Zethkri nodded. We offer them transport to a new world that can support their species. If they refuse, we use gentle force to encourage cooperation. Most primitives see reason when faced with our superior technology. And if they still refuse? Asked Counselor Vex of the Ethereal Union. Her energy-based form glowed brighter with concern. Then we use the pacification protocols, Zethkri said calmly. We disable their military forces and move them anyway. It is for their own good. Their sun will kill them all within 50 of their years if they stay. The hall fell quiet for a moment. Pacification was never pleasant, but sometimes primitive species needed guidance from their betters. The Council had used these methods for thousands of years. It kept peace in the galaxy and prevented unnecessary deaths. I volunteer to make first contact, Zethkri announced. The Vorthan Empire has experience with primitive species. We can handle this situation with minimal disruption. Approved, declared High Chancellor Oryx from his position at the head of the hall. The ancient being's voice carried the weight of 10 million years of galactic governance. Ambassador Zethkri will make contact with these humans. Standard first contact protocols apply. Offer relocation. If refused, implement pacification procedures. How long should we give them to decide? Zethkri asked. 1 solar cycle should be sufficient, Chancellor Oryx replied. That gives them time to understand the situation and make the logical choice. If they are as primitive as you described, they will likely welcome our assistance. Several council members nodded in agreement. Primitive species usually panicked when they learned their sun was dying. They begged advanced civilizations for help. These humans would probably do the same. 3 days later, Ambassador Zethkri's ship entered the human solar system. The vessel was beautiful and impressive, designed to show the Council's power and peaceful intentions. Its crystal hull reflected starlight in patterns that most species found calming. As they approached the blue planet, Zethkri studied the information his scouts had gathered. The humans had divided their world into nearly 200 separate nations. They spoke thousands of different languages. They worshipped dozens of different gods. They fought constant wars over resources, territory, and ideas. Typical primitive behavior, Zethkri muttered to his aide. No wonder they cannot advance. They waste all their energy fighting each other instead of working together. The ship's sensors detected thousands of artificial satellites orbiting the planet. Most were communication devices or primitive observation platforms. A few appeared to be weapons designed to destroy other satellites. Even in space, the humans continued their petty conflicts. "Ambassador," his aide reported, "we are receiving multiple radio transmissions from the planet's surface. Many different languages and signals. Can you determine which group speaks for their species?" "That is difficult to determine, sir. There appear to be several large organizations that claim authority over different regions. None seem to speak for the entire species." Zethkri sighed. Dealing with fragmented primitive governments was always complicated. Open channels to the largest population centers. Broadcast our standard first contact message in their primary languages. The message was simple and clear. The Galactic Council existed to maintain peace between species. The human sun was dying. The Council offered to relocate humanity to a safer world. They had one solar cycle to prepare for evacuation. The human response came within hours. Instead of the usual panic or grateful acceptance, the humans asked for a meeting. They wanted to discuss the situation. Discuss? Zethkri was puzzled. What is there to discuss? Their sun is dying. We offer to save them. They should be grateful. But the humans insisted on a meeting. They said they had questions about the relocation. They wanted to understand their options. They needed time to prepare their affairs. Against his better judgment, Zethkri agreed to meet with human representatives. The meeting would take place on a neutral space station that the Council constructed just outside Earth's moon. The humans arrived in a primitive chemical rocket that leaked fuel and rattled like old metal. Zethkri was embarrassed for them. His own people had built more advanced vessels 10,000 years ago. But when the human delegates stepped out of their crude ship, something surprised him. They moved with confidence, not fear. They looked around the advanced space station with curiosity, not awe. When they met his eyes, they did not bow or show the respect that primitives usually displayed. The lead human introduced herself as Secretary General Chen of something called the United Nations. She was a small female with graying hair and intelligent eyes. Behind her stood representatives from several major human nations and organizations. "Ambassador Zethkri," she said through a translation device, "thank you for meeting with us. We appreciate the Council's offer of assistance." "You are welcome," Zethkri replied, waiting for the usual requests for advanced technology or protection from other species. "We have some concerns about the relocation," Secretary General Chen continued. "Our planet contains the entire history of our species. Art, literature, monuments, graves of our ancestors. We cannot simply abandon everything we have built. Your sun will destroy all of those things anyway," Zethkri pointed out. "At least your people will survive on a new world." "We understand the situation with our sun," Chen replied calmly. "Our scientists have been studying it for decades. We know we have perhaps 40 to 50 years before conditions become impossible." This surprised Zethkri. Most primitive species did not understand stellar mechanics well enough to predict their sun's behavior. "Then you understand why you must evacuate," he said. "We understand why you think we should evacuate," Chen corrected. "But we would like to explore other options." "Other options?" Zethkri's crystalline body flashed with confusion. "What other options exist? Your sun will expand and burn your world. This is not negotiable. It is physics. Perhaps we could establish colonies on other worlds while maintaining a presence on Earth," suggested Dr. Petrov, a human scientist. "Some of our people could move to safety while others remain to preserve what can be preserved." "Impossible," Zethkri declared. "The Council cannot waste resources protecting people who choose to remain on a doomed world. You will all evacuate or face the consequences." The humans exchanged glances. Something passed between them that Zethkri could not read. Finally, Secretary General Chen spoke again. "We appreciate the Council's concern for our welfare. But humanity has faced extinction many times in our history. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, plagues, wars. We have always found a way to survive." "This is different," Zethkri insisted. "Your sun will boil away your oceans and burn your atmosphere. Nothing can survive that." "You may be right," Chen admitted. "But we would like the chance to try our own solutions first. We request additional time to explore alternatives." "How much time?" Zethkri asked, though he was certain no primitive species could solve a problem that required advanced stellar engineering. 10 years, Chen replied. Zethkri almost laughed. 10 years? Your species does not have technology to build stellar engines or move planets. What could you possibly accomplish in 10 years? We are a resourceful species, Ambassador. We may surprise you. The meeting continued for several hours. The humans asked detailed questions about Council technology, galactic politics, and the proposed relocation worlds. They seemed more interested in gathering information than accepting help. Finally, Zethkri grew impatient. The Council has made a generous offer. Your sun grows more unstable each year. Waiting only makes evacuation more dangerous. We understand the risks, Chen replied. But this is our world, our home. We cannot abandon it without exhausting every possible alternative. And if your alternatives fail, then we will face the consequences of our choice, Chen said simply. After the humans left, Zethkri reported back to the Galactic Council. Many members were amused by humanity's stubborn refusal to accept help. Typical primitive pride, laughed Admiral Corvin. They think they can solve problems that require technology they will not develop for thousands of years. Let them try, suggested Counselor Vex. When their efforts fail, they will beg for our assistance. And if they wait too long? Asked Counselor Thresh. Then they will die with their world, Zethkri replied. The Council cannot force species to accept salvation. If they choose extinction over relocation, that is their right. But something about the humans bothered Zethkri. Most primitive species either panicked when faced with extinction or gratefully accepted advanced help. The humans had done neither. They had remained calm, asked intelligent questions, and politely refused aid. It was almost as if they had been expecting this situation. Over the following months, Council observers watched Earth with growing confusion. Instead of chaos or despair, human civilization seemed to be organizing itself with unprecedented efficiency. Nations that had been enemies for centuries suddenly began cooperating on massive projects. What are they building? Zethkri wondered as he studied the reports. Human construction projects had multiplied across every continent. Massive underground facilities, new types of factories, strange arrays of equipment that Council sensors could not identify. Most puzzling of all, the humans had stopped fighting wars with each other. Perhaps they are preparing for evacuation after all, suggested his aide. But the construction did not look like evacuation preparations. It looked like fortification. The humans were not preparing to leave their world. They were preparing to defend it. This made no sense to Zethkri. Defend against what? Their sun? Stellar expansion could not be fought with weapons or walls, unless the humans were preparing to fight something else. The thought sent a chill through Zethkri's crystalline form. Surely the primitives could not think they could resist the Council's advanced technology. That would be suicidal madness. But as he watched the humans continue their mysterious preparations, Zethkri began to wonder if the Council had underestimated these primitive creatures from the doomed planet. Admiral Corvin stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth grow larger through the viewing screen. Behind him, 200 Council warships moved in perfect formation. Each vessel carried enough firepower to level a continent. The entire fleet could sterilize a planet in hours. This should be simple, Corvin told his staff. A demonstration of force. The humans will see our power and surrender immediately. The reptilian admiral had conquered dozens of primitive worlds. The pattern was always the same. Show advanced weapons, destroy a few military targets, accept surrender. Most species gave up after losing their strongest defenses. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we are receiving thousands of transmissions from the human planet, many different languages and signals. Any surrender offers? No, sir, most appear to be coordination signals of some kind. Corvin's scales flashed orange with amusement. Let them coordinate. It will not help against superior technology. The fleet entered Earth's outer atmosphere. Corvin expected to see panic in the cities below. Instead, human settlements continued their normal activities. Traffic moved along roads. Lights stayed on in buildings. People walked in streets as if nothing unusual was happening. Strange, muttered Commander Veltar from his position at the tactical station. Most species evacuate population centers when our ships appear. Perhaps they do not understand the threat, Corvin suggested. Begin standard demonstration protocol. Target their largest military installation. The fleet's sensors identified a massive complex called the Pentagon in the humans' North American continent. It appeared to be their primary military coordination center. A single plasma blast would vaporize it and show the humans what they faced. Charging main weapons, Veltar reported. Target locked. Ready to fire on your command. Fire! A brilliant beam of energy lanced down from Corvin's flagship. It struck the Pentagon complex with enough force to destroy a mountain. The massive building disappeared in a ball of superheated plasma. The explosion could be seen from space. Corvin waited for the usual response. Panicked communications. Pleas for mercy. Offers of surrender. Instead, something impossible happened. Every human military base on the planet opened fire at once. What? Corvin stared at his screens in shock. How are they hitting us? Thousands of missiles rose from Earth's surface. They were primitive chemical rockets that should have been useless against Council shields. But there were so many of them. And they were all aimed at precise points on his ships. Shields holding, Veltar reported, but his voice carried uncertainty. But sir, these missiles are targeting our sensor arrays and weapon ports. How do they know our ship designs? Before Corvin could answer, the first wave of missiles struck. Most exploded harmlessly against energy shields, but a few found tiny gaps in the protection. Sensor clusters went dark. Communication arrays sparked and died. Impossible, Corvin snarled. Primitive weapons cannot penetrate Council shielding. Sir, his science officer called out in alarm. These are not normal explosive warheads. Some contain electromagnetic pulse generators. Others release clouds of metallic particles that interfere with our targeting systems. The second wave of missiles was different. Instead of explosive warheads, they carried strange devices that latched onto ship hulls. Within minutes, Corvin's beautiful fleet was covered in human-made attachments. What are those things doing? He demanded. Unknown, sir. They appear to be scanning our hull composition and transmitting data back to the planet. The third wave made Corvin's blood run cold. These missiles did not target his ships at all. Instead, they exploded in space around the fleet, releasing billions of tiny metal fragments. In minutes, the area around Earth became a cloud of deadly debris. They are trying to trap us here, Veltar realized. Those fragments will tear apart any ship trying to leave at high speed. We have energy weapons, Corvin reminded him. Clear a path through the debris field. But when his ships began firing their plasma cannons, something unexpected happened. The energy beam struck the metal fragments and scattered in random directions. Some reflected back toward the Council ships. Others created electromagnetic interference that blinded sensors. The fragments are made of reflective alloy, the science officer reported. Our own weapons are being turned against us. Corvin had never seen anything like this. Primitive species were supposed to panic and surrender when faced with superior technology. They were not supposed to turn that technology into a weapon. Sir, communications reported, we are receiving a transmission from the human planet. Put it through. The face that appeared on screen belonged to a middle-aged human male wearing a military uniform. Behind him, Corvin could see a command center buzzing with activity. Council Admiral, the human said calmly. This is General Harrison of Earth Defense Command. You have attacked our planet and killed thousands of our people. This is an act of war. You are primitives, Corvin sputtered. You cannot declare war on the Galactic Council. Watch us, Harrison replied and cut the transmission. Immediately, every human settlement on Earth began attacking the Council fleet. Not just military bases, but civilian cities, industrial complexes, even small towns. They fired missiles, energy beams, and weapons Corvin had never seen before. How do they have so many weapons? He wondered aloud. Sir, Veltar said grimly, I think they have been preparing for this. All those construction projects we observed over the past year, they were not building shelters. They were building weapons. The attacks kept coming. Human cargo ships launched from hidden bases and flew directly at Council vessels. Instead of trying to avoid destruction, they accelerated toward the alien ships and exploded on impact. Each explosion was carefully calculated to cause maximum damage to specific systems. They are using suicide attacks, Veltar reported with disbelief. Their own people are sacrificing themselves to damage our ships. What kind of species does that? Corvin demanded. He soon learned. Wave after wave of human vessels threw themselves at his fleet. Transport ships filled with explosives. Industrial mining equipment converted into kinetic weapons. Even communication satellites reprogrammed to crash into Council hulls. But the most disturbing attacks came from Earth itself. The humans had learned to weaponize their own dying planet. Massive earthquakes shook the ground beneath hidden launch sites, catapulting massive projectiles into space. Volcanic eruptions were triggered at precise moments to launch clouds of molten rock at orbiting ships. They are using geological weapons, the science officer reported in amazement. They have learned to control their planet's natural forces. Weather patterns suddenly shifted around the Council fleet. Hurricane-force winds carrying metallic particles created electromagnetic storms that interfered with ship systems. Lightning strikes, somehow directed upward from the planet's surface, overloaded power grids on several vessels. "This is impossible," Corvin repeated, but his certainty was fading. Primitives cannot control weather and geological forces. "Sir," Veltar said quietly, "I do not think these humans are as primitive as we believed." The battle raged for 18 hours. The Council fleet destroyed dozens of human military targets, but every victory came at a cost. Human weapons, while individually weak, struck in coordinated swarms that overwhelmed defensive systems. Worse, the humans seemed to learn from each attack. Their targeting became more accurate. Their weapons more effective. "Damage report," Corvin ordered. 43 ships destroyed or disabled, Veltar replied. "Another 67 with significant damage. We are losing this battle, sir." "Against primitives?" Corvin could not accept it. "Sir, I recommend we withdraw and request reinforcements." The words tasted like poison, but Corvin knew his tactical officer was right. His demonstration fleet was being destroyed by creatures that should not have been able to scratch Council hulls. "All ships," he broadcast, "begin withdrawal to safe distance." But the humans had prepared for this too. As the Council ships tried to leave Earth's orbit, they discovered that the debris field had expanded. More metal fragments, more electromagnetic interference. Leaving would require careful navigation at slow speeds. The humans used this time to launch a final wave of attacks. Not weapons this time, but something worse. Information. Every Council ship received the same transmission. Technical specifications of Council technology. Tactical manuals. Even personal files of crew members. Somehow during the battle the humans had learned everything about their attackers. How did they get this information? Corvin demanded. Those scanning devices that attached to our hulls, Veltar realized. They were not just studying our armor. They were hacking our computer systems. The transmission included a message from General Harrison. "We know who you are now. We know where you come from. We know how your ships work, and we are very good at learning." It took the Council fleet 6 hours to navigate safely away from Earth. When they finally reached open space, Corvin looked back at the blue planet that had humiliated his forces. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving multiple emergency signals from across the sector." "What now?" "Human ships, sir. Small craft have launched from Earth and are heading toward Council colonies. The transmissions indicate they are carrying ambassadors." Corvin's blood chilled. The humans were not content to defend their world. They were taking the war to Council territory. "How many ships?" "We count over 300 vessels, sir, all heading in different directions." Corvin realized that the humans had been planning this from the beginning. The battle had not been about defending Earth. It had been about learning how to fight the Council. Now they were spreading across the galaxy, carrying that knowledge to other worlds. "Set course for Council headquarters," he ordered. "Emergency speed." "What should I tell the High Command, sir?" Corvin stared at the distant Earth, now peaceful again but somehow more threatening than any world he had ever seen. "Tell them we have made a terrible mistake," he said finally. "These are not primitives from a dying world. They are something much more dangerous. They are survivors who have learned to make war itself their ally." As his damaged fleet limped toward home, Corvin could not shake the image of General Harrison's calm face. The human had not been afraid. He had not been desperate. He had been confident, as if everything had gone exactly as planned. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Corvin wondered if the Council had finally encountered a species they could not defeat. And worse, he suspected the humans were just getting started. High Chancellor Oryx had ruled the Galactic Council for 3,000 years. In all that time, no primitive species had ever defeated a Council fleet. The news from Admiral Corvin's expedition should have been impossible. 43 ships destroyed, Oryx repeated, his ancient voice carrying disbelief, by primitives with chemical rockets. The emergency session included representatives from every major Council species. The Great Hall buzzed with nervous energy as delegates tried to understand what had happened at Earth. The humans are more advanced than we realized, Ambassador Zethkri admitted. Our initial assessment was clearly flawed. Flawed? Grand Admiral Corvin's scales flashed angry red. They used our own technology against us. They hacked our computers during battle. They turned their dying planet into a weapon. Counselor Thresh of the Mantid Collective clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. This suggests a level of strategic thinking we did not expect. How could we have missed such capabilities? Because they hid them from us, Corvin replied. Every primitive behavior, every sign of backwardness was carefully calculated to make us underestimate them. The hall fell silent as the implications sank in. If the humans had deliberately deceived Council scouts, it meant they had been planning for war from the moment of first contact. What do we know about these human ambassadors now spreading across our territory? Asked Counselor Vex. 317 ships have been detected, reported Intelligence Director Kyox. They appear to be heading toward Council colonies, neutral systems, and even some hostile territories. Each ship carries approximately 50 humans. 50 humans per ship, calculated Thresh. That is less than 16,000 individuals total. What threat could so few pose? If each ship can do what their planet did to our demonstration fleet, Corvin said grimly, they could destabilize the entire sector. High Chancellor Oryx raised a crystalline hand for silence. The Council has faced aggressive species before. The Berserker hordes, the viral mines, the Shadow Fleet. We have always maintained order through superior force and unified action. Murmurs of agreement echoed through the hall. The Council's military might had preserved galactic peace for millennia. I propose we end this threat immediately, declared Admiral Corvin. Send the full armada to the human system. 10,000 ships, enough firepower to sterilize their world completely. And the human ships already spread across our territory? Asked Zethkri. We hunt them down, Corvin replied. Each ship represents only 50 individuals. Our colonies can handle such small groups easily. Several delegates voiced support for the Admiral's plan. A quick, overwhelming response would show other species that challenging the Council was futile. But Counselor Vex glowed brighter with concern. What if we are still underestimating them? What if there are more surprises? Then we will deal with them as they arise, Chancellor Oryx decided. The Council cannot allow primitive species to defy our authority. Admiral Corvin, assemble the Grand Armada. Prepare for a full pacification campaign. While the Council prepared for war, humanity was transforming their dying world into something unprecedented. The attack on Corvin's fleet had been just the beginning. Sarah Chen stood in the converted subway tunnels beneath New Manhattan, watching thousands of workers install weapon systems where commuter trains once ran. As the former CEO of Chen Industries, she had once managed global supply chains. Now she coordinated the defense of an entire planet. Status report, she called to her staff. Orbital defense grid is at 60%, reported Colonel Martinez. We have 1,700 platforms operational. Each one can engage multiple targets simultaneously. What about the geological weapons? We have triggered fault lines in 43 locations, said Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the team's seismic engineer. The resulting earthquakes will launch kinetic projectiles when activated. Additionally, we have prepared volcanic artillery in 12 regions. Sarah nodded approvingly. Humanity had learned to weaponize everything, including their planet's death throes. The expanding sun was making Earth increasingly unstable, but they had turned that instability into an advantage. How are the weather control systems? Operational across all continents, replied Dr. James Okafor, formerly a climate scientist, now a tactical meteorologist. We can generate electromagnetic storms, redirect hurricane patterns, and create temperature inversions that will interfere with alien sensors. The transformation of human civilization had been remarkable. Every corporation, government, and organization had set aside their differences to face the alien threat. Competition became cooperation. Rivals became allies. Resources that had been wasted on conflicts were now focused on survival. Ma'am, called Lieutenant Torres from the communication station, we are receiving reports from our ambassador ships. They have reached their first destinations. Any contact with alien colonies? Yes, ma'am. Ambassador Ship 7 has made contact with a mantid mining colony in the Kepler system. They are requesting permission to establish a human settlement on an uninhabited moon. Sarah smiled grimly. The ambassador ships were not really seeking diplomatic solutions. They were gathering intelligence on council colonies while establishing forward bases. Each settlement would become a fortress if negotiations failed. What was the Mantid response? They seem confused, ma'am. They did not expect humans to travel so far from Earth. They are requesting instructions from their home government. Perfect. The longer alien colonies spent asking for guidance, the more time humanity had to prepare defensive positions. Any sign of Council military response? Long-range sensors detect massive fleet movements in the core systems, reported Captain Singh. It appears they are assembling a much larger force. Sarah had expected this. The Council would not accept the defeat of their demonstration fleet. They would send everything they had to crush humanity completely. How long until they arrive? Based on their previous travel times, approximately 6 weeks. 6 weeks to turn Earth into an impregnable fortress. Sarah looked around the command center, seeing determined faces where once there had been despair. Humanity had always been at its best when facing impossible odds. All right, people, she announced. We have 6 weeks to prepare for the largest military force in galactic history. Let's get to work. Across the planet, similar scenes played out. In the Sahara Desert, engineers worked to convert sand dunes into massive kinetic launchers. In Siberia, teams prepared to weaponize permafrost by creating controlled avalanches of ice and rock. The Amazon rainforest was being turned into a biological weapons laboratory, developing targeted viruses that would affect alien physiology. But humanity's greatest weapon was something the aliens could not understand: their absolute refusal to accept defeat. Marcus Webb had been a professional soldier for 20 years. He had fought in conflicts across Earth and thought he understood war. But this was different. This was not about territory or resources or ideology. This was about the survival of his entire species. Listen up, he told the assembled group of international soldiers, scientists, and civilians who had volunteered for humanity's first Space Marine unit. In 6 weeks, the aliens are coming back. This time they will bring enough ships to crack our planet like an egg. The volunteers came from every nation on Earth. Former enemies now fought side by side. Russian Spetsnaz trained with American Navy SEALs. Chinese Special Forces shared tactics with British SAS. Israeli commandos worked alongside Palestinian fighters. Our job is not to win, Webb continued. Our job is to make victory so costly that they regret ever hearing about humanity. The training facility had been built in an abandoned mine shaft 2 kilometers underground. Here, humans learned to fight in zero gravity, to survive in hostile environments, and to use alien technology captured from Corvin's fleet. Remember, Webb emphasized, every alien ship you board, every system you sabotage, every second you survive makes it harder for them to control other worlds. We are not just fighting for Earth. We are fighting for every species in the galaxy that refuses to bow to the Council. The volunteers understood. Humanity had always produced individuals willing to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. Now that sacrifice might determine the fate of galactic civilization. Meanwhile, in laboratories around the world, scientists studied the alien technology captured during the first battle. What they learned was both encouraging and terrifying. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes examined the crystal matrix from a Council energy weapon. As Earth's leading expert in quantum mechanics, she had been recruited to understand how alien technology worked. The energy storage is remarkably efficient, she reported to her team. But it depends on specific resonance frequencies. If we can disrupt those frequencies, we can cause their weapons to overload, finished Dr. Kim, her Korean colleague. Turning their own power against them. Exactly. And look at this. Elizabeth displayed a holographic model of a Council ship's hull. The armor is nearly impenetrable from outside, but the internal structure has specific weak points designed for maintenance access. So if we can get inside the ships, we can bring them down from within, Elizabeth confirmed. This knowledge was immediately distributed to the ambassador ships spreading across the galaxy. Each human settlement would know exactly how to fight Council technology. But perhaps the most important discovery came from studying Council communication systems. Dr. Raj Patel, a former internet security expert, had spent weeks analyzing alien data networks. Their entire civilization depends on instant communication across vast distances, he reported to the War Council. They use quantum entanglement networks to coordinate their activities. Can we disrupt their communications? Asked Sarah Chen. Better than that. Patel smiled grimly. We can hack them. Their security protocols assume that only advanced civilizations have the technology to access their networks. They never considered that primitives might find another way in. The implications were staggering. If humanity could infiltrate Council communications, they could coordinate attacks across the galaxy. Every human settlement could work together as a single, distributed army. As Earth's sun grew larger and more unstable, humanity raced to complete their preparations. Cities were evacuated into underground complexes that could survive orbital bombardment. Essential infrastructure was duplicated in hidden locations. Food production was moved to underground farms and underwater facilities. But most importantly, humanity prepared psychologically for total war. Every school taught basic combat skills alongside mathematics and literature. Every workplace included military training in its schedule. Every citizen understood that they might be called upon to fight and die for their species. The transformation was remarkable. A planet that had been divided by countless conflicts had united in the face of extinction. Humanity had found something worth fighting for, the right to exist on their own terms. Ambassador Zethkri watched the human preparations from his observation ship, stationed safely beyond Earth's defensive perimeter. What he saw defied everything he thought he knew about primitive species. "They are not trying to evacuate," he reported to the Council. "They are fortifying. They intend to fight the Grand Armada with everything they have." "From a dying planet?" Chancellor Oryx asked through the communication link. "They seem to view their dying planet as an advantage," Zethkri replied. "They are using stellar instability to power weapons we have never seen before. Solar flares redirected as energy beams. Magnetic field fluctuations turned into electromagnetic pulse generators." The Chancellor was silent for a long moment. "What is your assessment of their chances against the Grand Armada?" Zethkri considered his answer carefully. "If this were any other species, I would say they have no chance. 10,000 ships against one planet should be an easy victory. But these humans are not like any other species. They do not fight the way primitives should fight. They think like strategists, prepare like engineers, and fight like what, Ambassador?" "Like monsters, Chancellor. They fight like monsters who have learned that dying worlds can be more dangerous than living ones." The Grand Armada stretched across space like a metal constellation. 10,000 Council warships moved in perfect formation toward the small blue planet that had embarrassed their demonstration fleet. Admiral Corvin stood on the bridge of the mighty dreadnought Eternal Victory, watching Earth grow larger on his screens. "This time will be different," he told his staff. "No more underestimating primitive tactics. We will use overwhelming force from maximum range." But even as he spoke, Corvin felt uneasy. Intelligence reports from across the galaxy painted a disturbing picture. Human ambassadorships had established settlements on dozens of worlds. Each settlement was small, but they all shared common characteristics that worried Council strategists. "Sir," reported his intelligence officer, "we have received updated analysis of human colonial behavior. What have they learned? The humans do not behave like typical colonists. They do not seek the most habitable worlds or the richest resources. Instead, they choose locations that most species consider worthless. Barren moons, asteroid fields, the edges of hostile nebulae." Corvin's scales darkened with thought. Why would they do that? "Unknown, sir. But each settlement follows the same pattern. They arrive, establish basic shelters, then immediately begin extensive mining and construction operations. Within weeks, they have created fortified positions that would require significant force to dislodge." "Mining operations," Corvin repeated. "What are they mining?" "Anything they can find, sir. Metal ores, ice, radioactive materials. They seem to be able to turn any raw materials into useful equipment." This matched what Corvin had observed during the first battle. Humans had a disturbing ability to improvise weapons from common materials. A mining colony could become a military base in days. How many of these settlements exist now? "At last count 312, sir. They are spreading across the entire sector." Corvin realized that even if the Grand Armada successfully destroyed Earth, they would still face hundreds of human outposts scattered throughout Council space. Each one would be a potential source of guerrilla attacks and sabotage. "Sir," his communication officer interrupted, "we are receiving a transmission from the human planet." "Put it through." The face that appeared on screen belonged to General Harrison, the same human military leader who had spoken after the first battle. Behind him, Corvin could see what appeared to be an underground command center bustling with activity. "Admiral Corvin," Harrison said calmly, "I see you have brought more friends this time." "General Harrison," Corvin replied, "you cannot possibly believe you can defeat 10,000 Council warships." "You're probably right," Harrison agreed with disturbing cheerfulness. "But we don't need to defeat you. We just need to make you wish you had never found us. Surrender now and your species will be relocated peacefully to a suitable world." Harrison laughed. "Admiral, has anyone ever told you about human history? We have a saying, 'Give me liberty or give me death.' We would rather die free than live as slaves. You are not slaves. You are refugees being saved from extinction by people who attack our world and demand we abandon everything we have built." Harrison shook his head. "That sounds like conquest to me." Corvin cut the transmission in frustration. Why could humans not see that the Council was trying to help them? Their stubborn refusal to accept guidance was going to get them all killed. "Begin long-range bombardment," he ordered. "Target all major population centers. We will not close to engagement range this time." The Grand Armada opened fire from 10,000 kilometers away. Enough plasma beams and kinetic projectiles to sterilize a continent lanced toward Earth's surface. Corvin expected to see the planet's defenses crumble under such overwhelming force. Instead, something impossible happened. The attacks never reached the planet's surface. "What?" Corvin stared at his displays in shock. "Where did our weapons go?" "Sir," his tactical officer reported with amazement, "the humans have surrounded their planet with some kind of defensive field. Our energy beams are being absorbed or deflected. That is impossible. Primitive species do not have planetary shield technology." "It is not exactly a shield, sir. It appears to be a cloud of metallic particles held in orbit by electromagnetic fields. The particles are absorbing energy attacks and using that energy to maintain the field." Corvin realized what he was seeing. The humans had turned the debris field around their planet into a defensive system. Every piece of metal, every fragment of destroyed spacecraft, every bit of orbital junk had been converted into a protective barrier. "What about kinetic projectiles?" "Also intercepted, sir. The particle cloud is dense enough to destroy incoming missiles through simple collision. Then we will move closer and punch through their defenses." But as the Grand Armada advanced, the humans revealed the true scope of their preparations. The expanding sun had made Earth's magnetic field unstable, creating random electromagnetic pulses that interfered with ship systems. The humans had learned to control these pulses, directing them at specific targets. "Sir, we are experiencing system failures across the fleet," reported the chief engineer. "Navigation computers are crashing. Weapon targeting systems are offline. It is as if the planet itself is attacking us." That was exactly what was happening. The humans had weaponized their dying world. Solar radiation was focused into coherent beams. Magnetic field fluctuations became electromagnetic pulse weapons. Even the planet's unstable weather patterns were turned into defensive tools. Hurricane-force winds carrying metallic particles created electromagnetic storms that blinded sensors. Temperature inversions in the atmosphere bent energy beams away from their targets. The very air around Earth had become hostile to spacecraft. "This is scientifically impossible," Corvin declared. "No species can control planetary forces at this level." "Sir," his science officer said quietly, "perhaps we need to reconsider what we mean by primitive." The Grand Armada found itself fighting not just human weapons, but the planet itself. Every attack was met by coordinated defensive measures that seemed to anticipate their tactics. It was as if the humans could predict what the Council would do before they did it. How are they coordinating their defenses so effectively? Corvin wondered. His intelligence officer provided a disturbing answer. "Sir, we believe they have infiltrated our communication networks. They are reading our tactical plans in real time." "Impossible. Our quantum encryption is unbreakable." "Not impossible, sir. Just improbable." The humans seemed to specialize in accomplishing improbable things. As the battle continued, Corvin began to understand what made humans so dangerous. It was not their technology, which was indeed primitive compared to Council standards. It was their mindset. Humans refused to accept that anything was impossible, where other species would see an unwinnable situation and surrender. Humans saw a challenge to overcome, where others would be paralyzed by fear. Humans became more creative and determined. They turned every weakness into a strength, every disadvantage into an opportunity. "Sir," his tactical officer reported. "We are detecting massive energy buildups across the planet's surface." "What kind of energy buildups?" "Geothermal, sir. They appear to be tapping into the planet's molten core." Corvin watched in fascination and horror as the humans demonstrated their latest weapon. Controlled volcanic eruptions launched massive projectiles into space. Not random chunks of rock, but precisely shaped and aimed kinetic weapons. The humans had turned their planet's internal heat into artillery. They are using their world's death as a power source, he realized. The expanding sun makes the planet more unstable, but they use that instability to fuel their weapons. It was brilliant and terrifying. Most species fled from dying worlds. Humans stayed and learned to fight with stellar forces themselves. But the most disturbing moment came when Corvin captured and interrogated a human pilot, whose ship had been disabled during a reconnaissance mission. The pilot was a young female named Lieutenant Sarah Kim. "You cannot win this war," Corvin told her. "Even if you destroy our entire fleet, the Council will send more ships. We have thousands of worlds and trillions of citizens." "I know," Kim replied calmly. "That is why we will not just fight here." "What do you mean?" Kim smiled with the same disturbing confidence Corvin had seen in other humans. "Admiral, did you really think our ambassador ships were just seeking peaceful colonies?" A chill ran through Corvin's crystalline body. "What are they really doing?" "Learning. Every human settlement is studying local conditions, local species, local politics. We are mapping your entire civilization, finding its strengths, its weaknesses, its pressure points. For what purpose? For war, Admiral. If the Council wants to fight humanity, then the Council will face humanity everywhere, on every world, in every system, until you learn to leave us alone." Corvin realized that humanity had been planning for galactic war from the moment of first contact. Every polite request for time, every diplomatic meeting, every seemingly peaceful action had been preparation for this moment. "You are 8 billion primitives on one dying world," he said desperately. "You cannot fight an entire galactic civilization." "Watch us," Kim replied, echoing the words of General Harrison. As if summoned by her confidence, alerts began flashing across the bridge displays. Reports flooded in from across Council space. Human settlements were launching simultaneous attacks on Council colonies, supply lines, and communication networks. "This is coordinated," Corvin's intelligence officer reported with growing alarm. "Every human settlement is acting in perfect synchronization. It is as if they are all part of a single military unit." They were. Humanity had turned their species' survival instinct into a weapon. Every human, from Earth to the farthest colony, was part of a single organism dedicated to fighting for their right to exist. "Sir," communications reported, "we are receiving emergency requests for assistance from colonies across 7 sectors. Human settlements are attacking Council installations with weapons that seem impossible for such small groups to possess." Corvin began to understand the scope of humanity's strategy. They had not just prepared to defend Earth. They had prepared to fight a galactic war using tactics no civilized species would consider. What kinds of attacks? Sabotage of life support systems, computer viruses that target specific alien physiologies, biological weapons designed for individual species. "Sir, these humans seem to know exactly how to hurt each member species of the Council." Lieutenant Kim spoke up from her restraint chair. "We told you we were good at learning, Admiral. Every diplomatic meeting, every cultural exchange, every peaceful contact was a chance to study your weaknesses." Corvin stared at the human pilot with a mixture of admiration and horror. Humanity had turned diplomacy itself into reconnaissance for war. While the Council thought they were negotiating with primitives, the humans had been gathering intelligence on how to destroy galactic civilization. "You are monsters," he whispered. "No," Kim corrected. "We are survivors. And we have learned that sometimes, survival requires becoming something your enemies never expected." As reports continued to pour in from across Council space, Corvin realized that the Grand Armada's attack on Earth was not the real war. It was just a distraction. The real war was being fought on 1,000 worlds by small groups of humans who had learned to turn entire planets into weapons. Humanity had not just prepared to defend their dying world. They had prepared to export their struggle for survival to every corner of the galaxy, and they were winning. High Chancellor Oryx had not slept in 72 hours. Emergency reports flooded his command center from across the galaxy. What had begun as a simple pacification mission against primitive humans had become the greatest crisis in Council history. "Status report," he commanded, his ancient voice carrying exhaustion that 10 million years of rule had never produced. Intelligence Director Quox materialized beside the Chancellor's throne, his energy form flickering with distress. "Chancellor, the situation continues to deteriorate. Human attacks have been reported in over 400 systems." 400? Oryx could barely process the number. "How is that possible? We tracked only 300 human ships leaving their planet. The humans have been multiplying, Chancellor. Each settlement establishes hidden bases. They recruit local populations. They spread their methods to other species dissatisfied with Council rule." The implications were staggering. Humanity was not just fighting for their own survival. They were inspiring rebellion across the galaxy. What about Admiral Corvin's assault on Earth? Kex's form dimmed with bad news. "The Grand Armada has been fighting for 6 days. They have destroyed several human cities, but the planet's defenses continue to strengthen. The humans are using their sun's expansion to power weapons we have never seen before. And our casualties? Over 2,000 ships destroyed or disabled. The humans have turned their entire solar system into a weapon. Asteroid fields launch kinetic projectiles. Gas giants generate electromagnetic storms. Even the outer planets have been converted into missile platforms." Oryx felt the weight of his species' mortality for the first time in millennia. The humans were teaching the galaxy a terrible lesson, that civilized warfare had rules, but survival had none. "Bring me Ambassador Zethkri," he ordered. When the crystalline diplomat arrived, his usually perfect form was cracked with stress fractures. Observing the human war effort had changed him in ways that disturbed other council members. "Ambassador," Oryx said carefully, "you have studied these humans more closely than anyone. Tell me honestly, can they be defeated?" Zethkri was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried newfound respect for the species he had once dismissed as primitives. "Chancellor, I have watched them fight for days without rest. I have seen them turn industrial equipment into weapons, civilian volunteers into warriors, and their dying planet into the most effective military fortress in galactic history. That does not answer my question." "The question itself is wrong, Chancellor. You ask if they can be defeated. But these humans are not fighting to win. They are fighting to survive. And a species that refuses to accept defeat cannot truly be beaten, only destroyed completely." "Then we will destroy them completely." "With what forces?" Zethkri asked quietly. "Half our fleet is engaged at Earth and losing ships daily. The other half is scattered across the galaxy, trying to contain human uprisings that multiply faster than we can suppress them." Oryx turned to his military advisors. "What would complete sterilization of the human system require?" Grand Admiral Threx, the reptilian commander of the core fleet, calculated quickly. "To overwhelm their defenses completely, we would need to commit every available ship. Perhaps 15,000 vessels minimum. But Chancellor, but what? That would leave our core systems defenseless. And intelligence suggests the humans have infiltrated our deepest territories. If we commit everything to destroying Earth, we risk losing our homeworlds to sabotage and rebellion." The trap was closing around the Council. By forcing them to choose between total commitment and total vulnerability, humanity had created a strategic problem with no good solutions. "Show me the current tactical situation," Oryx commanded. The holographic display revealed the scope of humanity's achievement. From a single dying planet, they had spread across the galaxy like a virus of rebellion. Every human settlement had become a point of infection, spreading ideas that challenged Council authority. "Look at this." Zethkri pointed to a cluster of systems near Council headquarters. "The humans have established a colony in the Forbidden Nebula, a region we deemed too dangerous for habitation. What are they doing there?" "Thriving," Zethkri replied with grudging admiration. "They have learned to use the nebula's radiation as a power source and its gravitational anomalies as a defensive system. They have turned the galaxy's most hostile region into an impregnable fortress." Similar reports came from across Council space. Humans had colonized asteroid belts, ice worlds, radiation zones, and gravitational mazes. They took regions that other species avoided and made them into strongholds. "But their numbers are still small," insisted Admiral Threx. "Each settlement has only dozens of humans. Numbers are not their strength," Zethkri corrected. "Their strength is adaptation. Watch this intelligence report from the Kepler colony. The display showed a human settlement that had started with 50 colonists. 6 months later, it hosted over 3,000 beings from a dozen different species. The humans had not conquered these populations. They had liberated them how? Oryx demanded. By offering something the Council never provided, Zethkri explained. Freedom to govern themselves. The humans do not demand submission or tribute. They offer partnership based on mutual benefit. Species that had been oppressed by Council rule for centuries were joining human settlements, not as subjects but as allies in a growing rebellion against galactic tyranny. This is impossible, Admiral Threx protested. Our rule maintains order and peace. Why would civilized species choose chaos over stability? Because, came a new voice, your stability is built on fear, and fear eventually breeds courage. Everyone turned to see Lieutenant Sarah Kim, the captured human pilot, being escorted into the command center. Her restraints had been removed at her request for a formal meeting. You should not be here, Oryx declared. This is a military command center. And I am a prisoner of war, Kim replied calmly. Under galactic law, I have the right to address accusations against my species. The legal technicality was correct, though no primitive species had ever invoked such rights before. Reluctantly, Oryx gestured for her to speak. High Chancellor, Kim began, you still do not understand what you are fighting. You think this is about territory or resources or pride. It is about something much more fundamental. Enlighten us. Survival, Kim said simply. Every species in the galaxy has forgotten what it means to fight for survival. You have grown comfortable under Council protection. You have forgotten that freedom is worth dying for. The Council provides order and prosperity, Oryx insisted. The Council provides slavery disguised as protection, Kim countered. You decide which species can travel between stars. You control trade routes and resource distribution. You even determine which world species are allowed to inhabit. That is not protection. That is domination. Murmurs rippled through the command center. Some Council members had never heard their authority questioned so directly. And you think you can offer something better? Admiral Threx snarled. We do not need to offer anything, Kim replied. We just need to prove that resistance is possible. Every human colony that survives, every Council attack that fails, every species that chooses to join us instead of submitting to you, all of it proves the same thing, which is that the Council is not invincible, that freedom is achievable, that survival is possible even against impossible odds. Chancellor Oryx studied the young human with ancient eyes. In her calm confidence, he saw something that had been missing from galactic civilization for millennia. Hope. Real hope, born from struggle rather than granted by authority. What do you want? He asked finally. For humanity to be left alone, Kim answered. For our colonies to be recognized as sovereign territories. For the Council to acknowledge that some species prefer freedom to security. And if we refuse? Kim's smile carried the same disturbing confidence that all humans seem to possess. Then we will continue to prove our point, one liberated world at a time. Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the command center. Emergency reports flooded in from Council home systems. Chancellor, Communications Director Vex's energy form blazed with panic. We are receiving distress calls from the core worlds themselves. Human infiltrators have sabotaged critical infrastructure on Vorthan Prime, Hegemony Central, and Mantid Home. How did they penetrate our deepest defenses? Unknown, sir. But the attacks are coordinated and precise. They know exactly which systems to target for maximum disruption. Lieutenant Kim spoke up quietly. We told you we were good at learning. The horrifying truth became clear. While the Council focused on the obvious threat from human colonies, infiltrators had penetrated the heart of galactic civilization. The humans had been preparing for this moment from their very first diplomatic contact. You have been planning this for over a year, Oryx realized. We have been planning this since we first learned that other intelligent species existed, Kim corrected. Every human child learns about the possibility of alien contact. We have contingency plans for every scenario, including hostile first contact with a galactic empire. Your species plans for war before you even know if war is necessary? Our species plans for everything, Kim replied. We have survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, pandemics, nuclear weapons, and our own sun's death. We plan for every possible threat because experience has taught us that impossible things happen regularly. More alerts flashed across the displays. The human uprising was spreading exponentially. Species that had been loyal to the Council for thousands of years were declaring independence. Trade routes were being disrupted. Communication networks were failing. Chancellor, Admiral Threx reported grimly, "We are facing a choice. We can commit our remaining forces to destroying Earth and risk losing our core systems to rebellion, or we can withdraw from human space and risk appearing weak to other species." "There is a third option," Lieutenant Kim suggested. "Which is?" "Peace," she said simply. "Recognize human sovereignty. Withdraw from our territories. Allow species to choose their own governments. Stop trying to control the galaxy and start cooperating with it." The suggestion was radical beyond imagination. The Council had ruled through superior force for millennia. The idea of voluntary cooperation was alien to their understanding. "You ask us to abandon everything we have built," Oryx said. "We ask you to evolve," Kim replied. "To learn what humanity learned long ago. That survival depends not on controlling others, but on adapting to change." Chancellor Oryx looked around his command center at the faces of his advisors. Fear, confusion, and uncertainty reflected back at him. For the first time in galactic history, the Council faced a crisis they could not solve through superior technology or overwhelming force. What guarantee do we have that humanity will honor such an agreement? Kim considered this carefully. The same guarantee we have that you will honor it. None. But that is what makes it meaningful. Trust has to be earned through actions, not enforced through strength. The young human stood calmly in the center of galactic power, surrounded by beings whose civilizations were ancient when Earth was still cooling from its formation. Yet she spoke with the confidence of someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. "We are monsters from a doomed planet," she said quietly, echoing the words that Council forces had used to describe humanity. "But monsters are just creatures that refuse to die when you expect them to. And our doomed planet taught us the most important lesson in the universe, which is that even doomed things can choose how they face their end. We choose to face ours fighting for the right to exist on our own terms. The question is, what will you choose?" Chancellor Oryx stared at the small human who had somehow turned the galaxy upside down. In her words, he heard the echo of something his own species had forgotten in their millennia of dominance. The will to resist, the courage to change, the strength that comes not from power over others, but from the refusal to surrender what matters most. The monsters from the doomed planet had taught the galaxy a lesson that civilized species had forgotten. Sometimes survival required becoming something your enemies never expected, and sometimes the most dangerous creatures were those who had learned to make hope itself into a weapon. The war between humanity and the Galactic Council would end not with victory or defeat, but with something far more dangerous to established order. It would end with change, and change once begun could never be fully controlled or contained. The monsters from the doomed planet had won not by conquering the galaxy, but by teaching it to remember what freedom felt like, and that lesson would echo among the stars long after Earth's sun had finally consumed the world that had produced such stubborn, impossible, magnificent creatures.